All right. Well, it is 6:30, everyone, so we're going to get started. Welcome. Let me share my screen. Here we go. Okay. So, welcome to tonight's webinar from the Family Resource Center. Let me go next here. All right, I am Leanne, and I'm the coordinator of the Family Resource Center. If you have not been on one of our webinars before, I just want to take a couple minutes to tell you about the Family Resource Center. So we're there to help families navigate through special education, get connected to community resources, provide that parent-to-parent support, and just be that resource for families to have somewhere to turn when you have questions about how to support your kiddo. Something exciting. So this is the Family Resource Center, how you can stay connected with social media. It's pretty big. I think we're up to 48 followers on Instagram. I asked my adult child, does that mean I'm an influencer? And they said no. So, but you can join and be number 49. So that'll be pretty exciting. So we have a Family Resource Center Facebook page, which I also am very excited about, but evidently a lot of young people don't use that. So therefore we've got the Instagram for all ages. The Family Resource Center webpage is up here. And again, the YouTube channel where you can find past recorded webinars. This is just a little screenshot of the Family Resource Center page at the CUSD.com website. So I want to point it out because some families don't realize that we have IEP meeting resources on there. Again, you can register for these workshops on there, and the link to our other pages as well as the email is on there. So feel free to check that out. So a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. So we're in Zoom webinar format. That means your cameras are off, your mics are muted. You can sit back and be in your jams and snack on popcorn, and we won't know. You can be totally comfortable. So you're going to use the question and answer feature to ask questions, please. You'll see that along the bottom. It'll say Q&A. That is a much easier format for us to keep track of your questions. The chat feature is also enabled. You can use that. If you would like, go ahead and put in there who you are. And we would love to see, who you are, where you're from, if you're a parent or a professional. You can use that to chat with each other as well. But again, use the Q&A to actually ask questions. The handouts. In just a moment, I will put the link to the Google Drive that contains all the resources from tonight. I want you to pay attention to in there. I put things that you might find helpful. For instance, I found a student sort of a prep sheet for your child, to look at and help them prepare for their ITP meeting. There's lots of different resources in there, as well as the PDF of the PowerPoint from tonight. Survey. This also is important. Tonight, when you log off, you're going to see a link to a survey. The first question it'll ask is, are you a parent or a professional? You might be used to, if you've attended FRC webinars before, the typical survey I would ask questions of. This is a little different this year because I have a little bit different grant funding. And so it will ask if you're a parent, and then ask you some specific questions. If you're not a parent, you're just going to skip to the bottom, and it will just ask you for any input you'd like to share. And Tomorrow, you're going to receive an email from me. It will have your certificate of attendance. I know a lot of you need that, whether you're a student or a professional. The link to this recording, the link to all the handouts, the link to the survey. So don't feel like you have to memorize it tonight. All of that will be coming to you tomorrow as well. All right. And lastly, this is just the disclaimer that this is for educational purposes and to be that parent-to-parent support. It's not legal advice. You know, don't call your attorney on me, please. I'm just trying to help. Okay, so with that, I am going to stop screen sharing. And I'm going to turn it over to our lovely presenters. I will start looking at the chat and the Q&A. So Katie and Shan, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, and then I'm going to be working behind the scenes. All right?
Great. Thank you, Leanne. Well, thank you, everybody, for being here and taking an interest and wanting to learn more about the topic of transition. We're so excited to be a part of providing some information and a presentation tonight. My name is Katie Shea. I'm a program specialist in the district for the Adult Transition Program. And I started my teaching career 23 years ago. And it is my heart and my passion. Shannon, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hi, my name is Shannon Jorgensen, and I am a teacher on special assignment. I am the workability supervisor, and I'm also oversee the transition partnership program. Prior to this year, I was an ATP adult transition program teacher for 17 years. So yeah, I've been in the district for a while. It's nice to be here and share with you guys tonight.
So we are going to talk about what the outcomes of this training, what we want them to be for everybody attending today. By the end of the training, we want you to know how the IEP process supports our students with disabilities throughout their journey and in preparing them for life and adulthood. We also want to emphasize a couple of things. The individualized transition plan is one of those, as well as the age of majority, which is when the students turns 18 and the rights transfer from the parent over to the student. We also want to cover that completion of the 4-year high school program. And whether that results in that high school diploma or if it results in a certificate of completion. We additionally want to provide some resources to all of our families. We also would like to provide some ideas, some considerations for ways that you as a family and community can support our students with disabilities throughout this process. And then we plan to provide some student perspective as well as parent perspective on the topic of transition, which ought to be good.
Okay, this is a visual aid to show the process of a student who has an IEP for 15 years and after they complete their 4 years of high school. So you see at the top on the left, prior to turning 16, the individual transition plan becomes a component of the IEP in time, sorry, excuse me, to be in effect when the student reaches 16 years of age or sooner. Then the age of majority is explained on or before the student's 17th birthday. So this is when a student is advised of all the rights at the age of majority, which is 18 years old. Exception to this would be if a parent completed the conservatorship process. And then after your student completed the 4 years of high school, they will earn either a certificate of completion or a high school diploma. If they earn a certificate of completion, they will have the opportunity to continue their education at Clovis Adult Transition Program until they reach the age of 22. If the student earns their high school diploma, CUSD no longer provides special education. There is no longer an IEP. but students can go to college, trade school. If they are CVRC clients, they can go to a funded program, or they can go and work and receive services from the Department of Rehab.
So we are going to break down for you on this journey. First, a little bit about that individualized transition plan. So as Shannon pointed out, it becomes part of the student's IEP upon turning age 16, okay, within that 1 year. It is a legally required component. So you'll start to see it on an annual basis, every IEP that follows that one in which they are turning 16. And really the whole purpose is about helping the student to think about life after high school and then develop a plan. That plan will be things surrounding 3 topics, okay? It will be really based on that education and or training that is needed as the student shares what their interests are, what their preferences are, and then what their strengths are. Those are the critical layers in gathering necessary information for formulating those goals. From there, as I said, the goals are developed, education and training, employment, and then independent living as applicable. Some of our students don't require that, so that's how it becomes as needed or as applicable. From there, transition services are put in place to support those goals, and in helping that student move towards some of those goals that they want for themselves following high school. Part of this individualized transition plan is that it is part of that IEP and is part of the meeting in which the whole team discusses and weighs in on, you know, other types of transition services, as well as related services like speech and language, if the students' needs require that. Sometimes occupational therapy services are part of your student's IEP, and sometimes those can be very much part of what is a related service for the transition plan. And that's in addition to those transition services. Transition activities are also talked about as part of that transition service that's identified. Okay, so this flow chart, I believe, is a very user-friendly visual representation of the transition process, or the ITP, as part of the transition process. As you can see, it starts at the top there, beginning with the student's interests, preferences, and strengths. And that's obtained through the use of transition assessments. Sometimes those are interviews, sometimes those are actual measures that are inventories and things like that. But all of those things combined help us identify the student's strengths and preferences and things like that. From there, the student's present levels of performance are considered as part of that. And those things combined result in the development of those after high school goals, or what we call post-secondary goals. Those goals are identified in those 3 main areas, which I've talked a little bit about: education and training, employment, as well as the independent living, which is as needed or as applicable. From there, it segues into considering the individual students' performance across academic levels, communication, social, emotional, all of those different levels that are part of the present levels. From there, those needs or those goals are identified, and then the transition services and activities are identified.
Okay, so this shows an example of what an ITP may look like for a non-diploma student versus a student earning their diploma. So you can see the three different areas that Katie was talking about. Under education, the post-secondary education goal for a non-diploma student would be maybe to go to Clovis ATP, while a student earning their diploma might go to Clovis Community College or earn an AA. Under employment, they may look exactly the same. They both would have a post-secondary goal of just getting a part-time job. And then under independent living, the post-secondary independent goal for a non-diploma student may be to get around the community by taking public transportation, while a student earning their diploma may be trying to get their driver's license. Please understand that these will vary depending upon the student. This is just a roadmap that's specific to the student's post-secondary needs. This shows some activities that can support your students' preferences. I really like this chart. For example, let's say your student loves being outdoors. Some possible activities might include gardening. So a possible work site could be working at a nursery. Possible recreation leisure skill could be visiting a nursery. Let's say your student enjoys pushing things around. Some activities may include shopping or cleaning. So a possible work site could be going to the grocery store. And a possible recreation leisure could be going to the mall or to the gym. So I really like this chart.
Okay, so now we're going to get into what is the purpose of that individualized transition plan. So there are some legal mandates that make transition a legal requirement within the IEP. And it's with good reason, very good reason. There's these combined legal mandates here, both the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, as well as the Office of Special Education and Opportunities Act, in conjunction with the Workforce Innovation and Opportunities Act. They put in motion the need for really for teams, IEP teams, to put the students' future in mind as part of the IEP, in the IEP, and also including their voice and what they want for themselves. It's done with an incredible need and with defining what our purpose is. So not only is it legally required, but we know that those transition goals and the services that are identified to support those goals, that they really support the planning that our student needs, whether it's the backwards mapping, the researching, the practice, and the repetition that the student may need. You know, our students with disabilities all have unique and different needs. No one student is the same, and that means that their plan and their plan of support should be unique just to them. So with that, you know, our team's effort to involve any community agency that the student may need as part of preparing for their future, that we really work to facilitate that as part of our plans. And that's an important layer and with an important purpose. As we work our way through our training tonight, there will be some information about different agencies that become absolutely critical along this journey of transition for some of our students. And that ranges, it's a very, there's lots of varied layers to that, but yeah, we hope to provide some good guidance and clarity with what resources you may need to support your student with accessing. But know that you're not alone, because your team's jobs are also to help with that linkage and getting your student connected with what it is that they will need in the future. Okay, now we're gonna kind of pinpoint what the key elements are to a individualized transition plan. It is to be made up of the gathering of information, which involves age-appropriate transition assessments. That's the gathering of information through various means. It should include absolutely the student's voice and what they envision for their future, what they want. And it must involve those goals that are surrounding those three areas: education and training, employment, and then independent living as appropriate. You will see, as part of a transition plan, you will see that there is an identified course of study which identifies for that particular student whether they take a series of classes or courses, whether that is a diploma-bound student that will be identified in that particular area of the transition plan, or if for the student who is not working towards their diploma, that they will continue to make progress on those goals and obtain at the conclusion of their 4-year high school program that certificate of completion. In addition, there'll be transition services identified as part of the transition plan, and agencies and providers for those services will be identified. Annual goals in the student's IEP will be linked to that transition plan. And then, as I said, the transition activities are part of those transition services that help that student to move towards what it is that they want for their future. And those are all of the key components.
Okay, so next we have a video of a wonderful student, Addison Madruga, and we're going to give her perspective of what she thinks an ITP is. This is always so interesting to hear how students perceive certain parts of their IEPs. And so we asked her, totally blind, no prepping whatsoever.
Hi, my name is Addison Madruga. I'm 19 years old. It's kind of like the map to help me with my future. My educational employment goal was to work at Save Mart. Last time I didn't get hired last time because they weren't hiring. Calling them to follow up to see if I would get the job.
And how long did that take?
For a few months.
So how many times do you think you actually called them?
I called them once a week. My independent goal is to get my driver license by spring. I have 3 times and then I failed 3 times.
So what are you doing in the meantime to get around town?
I take Clovis Transit Roundup.
What is that?
It's a bus where they can take you anywhere, but you have to call in for an appointment. Or you can also use the app.
Okay, so this is a great example of an ITP with Addison. It was amazing. She was one of my students. She came to our program and she wanted to work at Save Mart. And she literally tried for about a year and finally got hired, and it was amazing. The transportation thing really transformed her into a new independent woman, because when she originally started at Clovis ATP, she depended, like most students, on their parents and family members to take them from point A to point B. And when we taught her that she really wanted to get her driver's license, and we said, you know what, absolutely, we will do everything we can to try to get you to achieve that goal. But in the meantime, let's get you traveling around town independently. And so we introduced her to Roundup. And I don't know if any of you know what Roundup is, but it's a door-to-door service that for the Clovis residents that comes to your door. They pick you up in a bus and then they drop you off to anywhere in Clovis or Fresno, and it's free. And I'm telling you, this girl took control of this, and within about a month of learning how to take Roundup, she was taking it on the weekends to the mall, going to see her friends, and it's just really amazing. So even though she still does work toward getting her driver's license, that permit test is hard to pass, she's at least able to get around town independently. Sorry. All right, so how can families help? This is really important because the support of a family is vital in this process with the students. So researching and visiting community colleges and employment training programs. Fresno City has a great college to careers. So if your student is not wanting to actually go to college to take the college courses, there are other programs that are available for them. Referral to CVRC, eligibility process, and the follow-up. This is huge. So anyone can refer a student to CVRC. And for those of you who don't know, CVRC is Central Valley Regional Center. And earlier, the better. So once the student's referred, a letter goes home informing the family and or the student of the referral. And that's all they do. So you think, oh, okay, great. Shannon Jorgensen referred my student, but that's not it. That's not the end of it. You need to follow through with it. Call CVRC, say, hey, I got this referral. What's my next step? They do not give you an outline on what to do. You need to be proactive on this. And just saying that you might want to check to make sure that they have all the paperwork, and sometimes you might have to send it in again, and that's okay. We will help you with that process. Submit the last 3 IEPs and most recent psych report and any other documents that support the student's explanation of their disability. So if you have any medical records or anything that supports this disability, will be better for your case and will give you a better chance at becoming a CVRC client. Talk to your student on an ongoing basis about their future. This is so important. What do they want? But also guide them to realistic expectations. It's great that they might want to do something that you can't really see right now. We're not saying don't encourage them, but also say, okay, so you want to maybe be a teacher. I know that I wanted to be a teacher, but right out of high school, I wasn't a teacher. I had to do a lot of other jobs before I became a teacher. So we have to show students that, yes, you might want to do this, but let's look at now and let's have some realistic goals of jobs and stuff that you could do now. I also understand the importance of your students attending their IEPs. This is so important at a young age, even elementary. Review it with them multiple times throughout the year. I can't tell you how many students we got at the adult program that didn't know, one, their disability, didn't know the goals, didn't know the present levels, all this stuff. And it's so important for them to be aware of this, because once they turn 18, they are now responsible for their IEP. They are age of majority. So review it with them. Also make sure they know what their disability is, and then help them understand what type of accommodations they need to help them at school and eventually at work. I'm in the workability supervisor for a district, and my team and I place students in paid work experience, and it's shocking how many of our students don't know their disability or what support they need. They need this to understand this in order to advocate for themselves. So important. So get them comfortable with the word disability. This is used on so many applications and paperwork and for the rest of their lives. So help them understand that this is not a bad word, but commonly used word, that they need to know what that means and what their disability is. I always tell students, hey, I cannot hear. I really have a hard time hearing. That's my disability. Doesn't mean that it's slowing me down. It just, I know what I need to tell people. I need to have the words at the bottom of the screen if I'm watching something. I need to advocate for myself. And so you're just teaching them to advocate for themselves. Talk regularly about alternative options and about making adjustments along the way. So be realistic with your student. They may know how to play the guitar and want to be a country singer for their career, but help them understand that playing the guitar is a hobby right now. And until they make money doing it, then they need to have another realistic plan. We don't want to crush their dreams, but we also want them to have realistic expectations. And then utilize the community resources to help develop their future interests and preferences of your student. Some examples are break the barriers, or gyms, or resources for independence, and there's many, many more. Also, like I said earlier, help your student to self-advocate instead of emailing the teacher. It's so easy for parents just to reach out to the teacher. Try coaching your student to generate the email to their teacher themselves. You can help them and help them word it, but start teaching them now. Also, teaching resilient skills, how to recover from disappointment or mistakes, is so important as well. Based on your students' needs and ability for them to be independent outside of their home, consider consulting with outside agencies or seeking legal guidance on the topic of conservatorship and/or alternatives to conservatorship. Plan ahead in preparation for your student before they reach the age of 18. This is really important. And then also encourage your student to volunteer and/or obtain part-time or seasonal employment to gain meaningful work experiences while they are in public school system, and/or assign household jobs for them to complete and be responsible for. This is the first thing for them as far as work goes. It's just having them be responsible for something. This teaches those soft skills that they will need later on in the work field. Oh, I'm sorry. I am so sorry, guys. Sorry.
That's okay. Well, you get it
Okay,
back.
so before we go on to the next one, we have some questions. Leanne?
Yes. And that was a lot of information. I can't thank you ladies enough for sharing that. Even just so far, I want families and professionals who have joined so far to feel like you don't need to memorize this all in one sitting, okay? It's a lot of information. And so, you know, you're not going to become an expert per se in an hour-and-a-half webinar, but this is such good information to be able to start understanding that big picture, the changes that are going to take place, the terminology. I know as a parent myself, I had no clue for the changes that were going to take place at age 18. And the thing too is, because I serve the whole school district, you know, this applies to any child with a disability, you know, whether they have, you know, if you're looking at life after age 18, right? Whether your kiddo is in a, you know, medically fragile program or RSP or anything in between, there are changes that are going to happen, significant changes that families need to learn about. And so that is our passion, is to help you understand that and help you even to start forming your questions. So as you're going through this process. So let's read. Rose wanted to know where does getting help from the court or conservatorship to help my son after he turns 18 come in to help out with daily needs?
Ooh, so, okay. So as I'm listening to that question, I am hearing, how do I access the resource for my son? I'm hearing a couple questions in one question. Mm-hmm. And there are resources out there. Disability rights is one of them. And that can offer some really, really good resources, especially regarding things like conservatorship and things like that. I also hear in that same question about helping your son. Can you actually just repeat that question again, Leanne? I'm sorry. I want to make sure we answer it.
I will. So, and I'm with you, Katie. I think there's a couple different questions Rose might be asking. So where does getting help from the court / conservatorship to help my son after he turns 18 come in to help out with daily needs? So I'm wondering if she, and Rose, I'm not sure exactly what you mean, but your son doesn't need to be conserved to get help with daily needs. Okay, so let's break it up into those two different sections. So for instance, he might be eligible for IHSS, in-home supportive services, right? And that again, you know, he wouldn't have to be conserved for that. But if conservatorship is something your family is thinking about, you can always reach out, you know, to an attorney, of course, to discuss those options. But some families are, you know, think, Leanne, I can't afford $3,000, $5,000, $10,000. You know, are there some other options? You could always talk to a paralegal as well. And like Katie said, Disability Rights has some wonderful resources. You feel free, please, to reach out to me at the Family Resource Center as well, and I can connect you to community-based resources. Katie, anything else to jump in on that?
That was beautiful. I would also say if your student is a client of CVRC, we work in such close partnership with Central Valley Regional Center. They are amazing, and I would actually share that question and concern with them. And I'm sure that they will also offer some ideas and resources as part of the team. So.
Great idea. And, you know, again, I feel like this presentation is always kind of like drinking from the fire hose, right? Because first you have to figure out even, you know, is my child diploma track or non-diploma track? And then, I mean, there's just what agencies take over after age 18. There's just, again, there's so many acronyms, there's so much information, but it's okay. We're here to help. So don't feel like you have to learn it all tonight. The next question is, if our ITP was not at all how you presented tonight, can we request another ITP?
Oh my gosh, that is a fantastic question. I love that question. I would 100% encourage, if there is any part of your student's IEP, which includes that individual transition plan, that you feel is perhaps missing something, or your student themselves has voiced, like, that's not what I want for myself, I would 100% recommend just having a conversation with your student first and encourage them to request an IEP meeting where those concerns can be processed. That's what I would totally recommend. Shannon, did you have any additional thoughts on that one?
No, I agree completely with you. The ITP is supposed to be so personalized to the student. This is their story. Like Addison said, it's a roadmap for their future. And so that should reflect what they want their future to be. And if it's not, then absolutely, I would go back to the table and discuss it with the IEP team.
And one of the things that I didn't understand at first either, first off, I didn't realize we had an ITP, you know, and that was just my own lack of awareness. But I didn't realize too that once an ITP was written, just like the IEP, you know, itself, it's not set in stone. It can be drafted that first year and written and included, and the next year, you know, our kiddos are growing and changing every year. It can be amended, you know, new things could be added to it, or like you said, you can kind of change directions a little. Maybe Johnny decided, you know, oh, I actually want to do this instead. And it's a living, breathing document, just like the whole IEP is. And so that was something that took me a while to learn as well. So the follow-up questions that went along with the ITP question that we just had is she wanted to know who does the assessments, the vocational teachers, the FLS teacher.
the case manager does of the student. So whoever the case manager is that's running the IEP is usually the person that does the assessments with the student.
Okay, great. Then we have another question. So my ex-husband is wanting to help him, but I'm wanting to help him. So does that mean I have to go to court to help him with his daily needs? Oh, I see. So that might be that sounds like a guardianship.
Yeah, or a custodial arrangement that that you're wanting to have set up,
Right.
which is done through the court process. And usually there's, you know, paperwork that identifies that sort of arrangement that's made, and then the paperwork is usually given to the school district at the school. But yeah, I mean, you may have a parent who is the primary custodial parent, however, or all of the physical custody is within that one parent. However, you know, both would be included as part of the IEP team as experts of the student, as both of the parents have input to provide, and the team will want to hear input from both. That does get tricky though.
Absolutely.
As you've very clearly laid out in your question, it can be really a tricky thing.
And then we'll do one more question before we keep going. Can you expound upon conservatorship at age 18? My son's teacher informed us that we have to do it.
Yeah, that would not be something that that the school district would really have an expertise to sort of weigh in on, as far as whether or not a parent was wanting to go through that process. That's strictly a legal process. Again, it requires resources and time, and also, you know, what that process yields is the removal of rights, because in certain cases through that evaluation, which is pretty extensive, that student isn't able to make those sound decisions for themselves. So there are alternatives to conservatorship, lots of them, and I would highly recommend trainings and information about the process before deciding whether or not you want to go through with it. If it's one of those things where you're like, you know, if my student is nonverbal and not able to advocate for themselves about what their needs are, that might be a more clear sort of next step for you. I think it just depends on your individual case, but definitely obtaining information and not, again, the school district is not the expert. We do talk about it because it becomes a part of that transition plan. It's actually on the second page of the transition plan, where we talk about the age of majority, as well as whether or not the student is conserved. And that's an ongoing question that we ask in the IEP and in preparing the IEP once that student is 18. If they continue to need the IEP because, let's just say, they require services and an IEP when they're 18 to 22 years old, which some of our students do have that, then that continues to be an ongoing question. But yeah, our families that have openly shared with us the process, it's definitely lengthy and involves a lot of appointments and time, and it's a very extensive evaluation that takes place.
I would agree with that, Katie. And also, it's been a hot topic the last couple years with a lot of the disability rights advocacy going on in the state. It has recently, in California, become much more difficult to conserve someone. And again, please feel free to reach out to me at the Family Resource Center, and I can connect you to resources out in the community that can help you navigate that as you're researching options. Also, I'd like to point out in the Google Drive of handouts that you'll see later, I put a link of resources on there, and as well as some, I downloaded, like, for instance, Clovis Community College's Disability Services Handbook, just to give you guys just some ideas to look at about what it might be like after high school. But on that link of resources, you're going to see one for Connections California, another FRC in the state, one of my partners. They have a wonderful resource called Connections California, and it has tons of resources about transition and those topics of conservatorship. And so be sure to check that out. All right, we are going to get back to your presentation, ladies. Good questions, everyone.
Yes, thank you so much for those questions. Okay, so as we dive now away from that transition plan, we're going to hit the age of majority. And a couple of things about the age of majority. What is it? We've talked a tiny bit about what that is, but it is when a student turns 18, okay? It is a state law that requires students to be informed of their educational decision-making rights. And that does occur in the context of an IEP meeting prior to the student turning 18. So it's that IEP, wherever that due date is, unless it's an IEP meeting not that's parent requested or something like that, that wouldn't be based upon when it falls due each year. But it would be at that IEP where it would be discussed that the rights of that are currently the parents will be transferring over to the student, and a review of the procedural safeguards at that time is reviewed with the student. And preparing your student for that is important, because as parents in the IEP process, understanding those procedural safeguards and what consent means and those kinds of things, it can be overwhelming. And preparing your student to understand, like, it's okay if you don't understand what words are being used. Ask, because that's, that's, you have to, because you're going to have to sign something that that is an important thing, and you want to understand what it is you're signing. So we'll talk more about those kinds of things that parents and families can do to help their students, but that's just a little highlight right there, because those procedural safeguards are sometimes challenging to understand what they entail exactly and when to apply certain parts of them. The age of majority also is about the student understanding that they are now in charge of those educational decisions. So no longer when consent is required, like when there's an assessment plan, they alone would have the right to consent or not consent to that, as well as that IEP and the responsibilities that come with that. There is one exception to this, and that's obviously when a parent seeks the conservatorship process, and then there's a court order that changes the fact that the student isn't making their own educational rights and educational decisions. But that would be the only exception. So what else happens around that same time? And in preparing the materials for this, Shannon and I really felt like we wouldn't be really talking about the significance of this without talking about all the other pieces that seem to fall in line. And that is records, for example. Let's start with records. If you wanted access to some educational records, once the student turns 18, as the educational rights holder and the student that assumes their rights, they are not able to have those records requested any longer from a parent. And it's important for you to know that as parents and family, that you'll want your student to be with you if you do need access to some educational records. That could include things like grades, transcripts, things like that. And it's not because anybody's trying to, prevent you from getting access to something. It's just part of what happens. And so encouraging your student to do those kinds of things with you isn't a bad practice leading up to them being the person responsible for that. Additionally, any medical records, medical information, appointments, things like that, HIPAA laws are in place, and a student, when they turn 18, they are entitled to those privacy and the confidentiality of those things, as well as some discussions involving medical needs, and that can be really difficult for some of our families to navigate if their student is not able to speak and advocate for themselves, to be able to explain what their needs are with a medical professional. As well as some insurance changes sometimes happen once students turn 18, that can be very challenging for our families. So knowing ahead of time whether or not your students' coverage will be impacted under your policy can be really helpful. In addition, financial records are private for an adult. And as your student is an adult, they can also enter into those legally binding contracts that have some financial liability and responsibility. Registering to vote happens, which also means jury summons can come your way for your student. And in addition to that, military selective service may be something that if you have a son with a disability, that they may need to register for. So those are just some additional things that are happening around that same time that make this particular time in life a little bit challenging, on top of being challenging.
Okay, so some key elements of the age of majority are the IEP meeting happens on an annual basis, and we'll address the topic of age of majority as part of the ITP section of your student's IEP. So we're talking about the ITP. On the first page, it has, education, employment, and independent living. There's a second page of the ITP, and that's where all the age of majority is on there. And I'm going to actually show you this in a minute. This is the opportunity to ask questions about this, when this will occur in the context of an IEP meeting prior to your student turning 18. I'll show you an example. And as part of your student's ITP, a question regarding whether or not the student is conserved as of the student's 18th birthday is embedded as part of our IEP. So when the rights transfer from the parent to the student, as Katie mentioned earlier, the student now has the educational rights folder. That means they now sign the meeting notice and approve or decline the IEP. Students are still encouraged to invite their advocates to their IEP meetings. So advocates, these are the parents, all right? So even though a lot of times when students come to Clovis Adults program, most of them are 18, we always encourage them to include and invite their parents or whoever they want at their IEP meeting. Procedure safeguards will be explained and summarized to the student in the context of the IEP meeting, and consent on the IEP and requests for educational records, registration, attendance in school are all transferred now to the student at 18. So here's an example of the second page of the ITP. And as you can see, circled in red, there the student is explained the age of majority on or before the 17th birthday. There's also a box, as you can see right down here. Okay, and this is where you would check yes or no if they're conserved or not. So if you wonder if it's on the IEP, it is. This is where it is. And typically this is about the 3rd or 4th page of your IEP, okay? Okay, so this is another student, Haley, and this is her explaining what she thought age of majority is.
I feel like you're just like becoming into adulthood where you have to have all these responsibilities, have to get the bills paid, have to make sure like even if you have a job already, you can continue that job. And then it's just like saying like you're free, like you're not under your parents' roof anymore, or if you are, you're just more of an adult and saying like, Mom, can you do this? And it's like, well, you can do it because you're already 18 and over, and yeah.
Very well put. I love that. That was awesome. So I think she has an idea of what it is to be 18.
Yeah, she definitely has a positive or a upside spin on it for sure.
Exactly. So preparing your student before they reach the age of majority. There's, I mean, a lot that has to happen before that. So restrictions and limitations, learn about your options. So Disability Rights California and other support agencies want to be protecting and advancing the rights of individuals with disabilities across California for more than 40 years. All right, I think Katie mentioned them earlier. Power of attorney. So this gives one or more person the power to act on behalf as your agent. So this is one of those alternatives that you can use, is a student can give their parent the power of attorney for certain rights. So that's something you can do as well. I've even seen it just notarized, a piece of paper with it put on there and a parent of a student signing it and getting it notarized. Conservatorship or limited conservatorship. So while a general conservatorship is often blankets responsibility to the conservator in a general conservatorship, the goal of a limited conservatorship is to allow the individual to maintain as much independence as possible. So this may mean that you only have rights over medical decisions, or sometimes it's just over educational decisions. So there's different kinds of conservatorships to look into. So that's something that you can research and do what's best for you in your situation. You need to help your student to assume oversight and management of their health needs. So teach them how to manage their medication is one thing, or make their own medical appointments, have them call, write a script for them to read, etc. So there's so many different things you can help your student advocate for themselves now, all right? Or even just teach them who their doctor is. A lot of students don't even know the name of their doctor. So that's an important thing to know, and it's on a lot of applications. Also, early on, encourage and foster self-advocacy. Have them do something simple as ordering food, calling the pizza for the family that night is one way they can advocate. Little steps like that, or calling businesses in conversations with teachers. So, you know, have them advocate for themselves, but you can coach them along the way, all right? And then also find out about your disability. Understand the areas of strengths and weaknesses that they have. Understand that their disability might affect future employment and their career choices. I have a student that wanted to be a veterinarian, set on being a veterinarian. However, she was unable to earn her high school diploma. So we had to have a realistic conversation about her disability and how it affects her ability to earn a diploma. Then we came up with some alternative careers and that were attainable. And so she was able to do some volunteer work at a shelter, animal shelter. And so those are just some things that you can help your student to understand. Make sure that they also have current documentation and understand it. So current IEPs, psych reports, medical documentation in relation to the disability. Have them be aware of what those look like. And then also actively participate in all transition related meetings, IEP, 504, IPE, any of those. And then learn to express your current and future needs, concerns, interests, and preferences. This is really important that they understand what they need and what they like. And if they have anything that they have questions about, ask them daily questions about what they like in school is one way of having them reflect upon their education. Have them think of short-term goals and also long-term goals. So you want to go to college after your high school. Well, what are you going to do right now? What are some goals that you could do this semester for that? Start having them think in goals in short and long term. And then know about their rights and responsibilities and what are the grievance procedures at the selected colleges. So this is for students' protection. They need to know where they go if they have been discriminated against or violated. This is important for them to learn how to protect themselves. So you need to have that discussion with them. And there are, if you go down any college campus or a website, they actually have that there and you can show them right from your home what they need to do. And then develop a personal information file with disability related information. So this is really great. I know that in our program, the adult transition program, we used to, and we still do now, digital form, but you could do a paper form too, where you have a portfolio and have all their important documents. It's almost like a filing cabinet. They don't need a whole filing cabinet. They just need a little portfolio. And you want to make sure that they have their current high school records, medical records, a copy of their current IEP or 504 plan. They're going to need that. A college entrance exams like their SATs or ACTs if they have those, and psychological and educational evaluation records. These are all things that they need to have on hand, and it's amazing. As soon as you graduate, you don't know where they are. So it's good to have those. Another thing to put in there too are copies or their social security cards. Those you'll need those for work, and then also California ID. So a lot of students come, they don't have their California ID. Well, after you're done with high school and after ATP, you don't have a school ID anymore, so you can't use that when you go places. So you need your California ID. You don't have to drive. You can go. Anyone can go and get it. It's very simple, but it's a very useful tool to open a bank account. You're going to need this. If you apply for jobs, you're going to need this. So it's good to have it now rather than later.
And I think, Leanne, we are ready to go to the questions again.
Yes.
Okay, we don't have any in the chat right now.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think we'll just keep moving.
Proceed. Sounds good.
Mhm.
Okay, we are now going to talk about completion of those 4 years of high school. And upon completion, you have either obtained and met the requirements for your high school diploma. And if not, then you've obtained something called a certificate of completion. It is an alternative pathway. It is for special education students. And it is far before the end of the 4 years of high school. It is processed, discussed in the context of an IEP, and very thoroughly examined based on the student's needs, their learning profile, how their disability may impact their access to grade level standards-based instruction. And as I said, that should be very, very early on, prior to the 4th year of high school. I mentioned that it is also a non-diploma, which signifies that the student isn't able to meet those required state requirements, those mandated state requirements for the diploma. And that with the certificate of completion, what you are able to do at that point, after you finish your 4-year high school program, is you're able to continue receiving special education services. What is a free and appropriate public education, and have your IEP implemented at the happiest place on earth called the Adult Transition Program. I am only saying that because it's the best place in my opinion. But it is designed for our special education students 18 to 22 who require special education services and ongoing support to help with independent living, self-advocacy, and need their IEP services. So what the ATP program provides, as I said, is ongoing implementation of the IEP. We will be supporting the student, meeting the student where they are to build those self-advocacy skills. We also focus on those daily living skills. How can we help your individual student become more independent? For many of our students, that might mean preparing a meal for themselves as independent as possible. It might mean crossing the street. I mean, it could mean such a wide range of things, but we are experts in this area. We do emphasize as part of our program how to access resources in the community, because again, our program is designed to prepare students for that point when they age out of the public school system, which is at 22 years old. So it's an important thing for us to think about what's next, because education will come to an end at that point.
Katie?
Yes.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Please.
So I know we're talking about Clovis Unified's transition program. Do all districts or SELPAs have to have an adult transition program?
My goodness, I love that question. So yes, not necessarily districts, because several districts might be part of one SELPA. And there are a wide range of ways in which adult transition programs are provided. Some are county programs, and there may be different eligibility criteria as far as residency goes. In Clovis Unified, you know, when a student is not able to earn their diploma and is a resident of Clovis Unified, that is what makes you eligible for the adult transition program. That tends to be the case across adult transition programs, although there may be some slight variance to that.
Okay, so a family would just ask their IEP team then?
Correct.
Got it. Okay, do you mind if I ask a couple more questions?
No,
real
I
quick?
love it. Please.
Yes. So we have one that says, what if your student isn't currently capable of achieving their diploma? Can they earn their GED during those years, 18 to 22?
Oh, that's such a great question. You want to take that one, Shannon?
Yeah, I do. So technically, yes, they can try to do that. I want to be completely transparent on this. It's very difficult. I've had in my 17 years, one student do it, and it took them 3 years to pass it, when in that same time they could have probably taken the classes at the adult campus and got their diploma in a different way. So it is very difficult, but yes, they can go for it. But typically, if they are not getting their high school diploma because of the ability to earn it, then most likely they'll have a difficulty with taking the GED as well.
Okay, but there's not an actual barrier as far other than ability. There's not educationally. I mean,
anyone
could
can
try.
take it. Anyone
Got it. Okay.
take it. Absolutely, absolutely.
And I'm going to skip down to this one real quick. Is ATP broken up into different programs like autism, FLS, vocational?
Oh my gosh, I love that question. I love all these questions. So we do have currently we have 12 different adult transition program teachers. We have a range of levels of programs, and we are able to continue the current placement for many of our students. They may not be labeled in the same manner because ATP, or the Adult Transition Program, is all self-contained special day class programs. So, so we work very closely with our high school case managers. We start the transition planning process with our seniors, and we will be at the table for your transition meetings. We also have a wide range of transition activities that we work really hard to develop that are very student focused, because we want the student to start to own and take ownership over parts of their education as appropriate. So for example, you might, you know, in the 6th to 9th grade, or 6th to 7th grade, sorry, I just skipped junior high, didn't I? 6th to 7th grade transition, it might have been appropriate to go and, you know, tour the school or walk the campus with your student. I will say that in most cases, the secondary teacher will be in early communication with the ATP teacher where the student is projected to attend, and will set up as part of your student's day while they're still a high school student to take a outing in the school van and actually go to ATP. Again, it's a very student-centered activity, and it supports the student and their transition. So I share that with you just because we work really hard to build a bridge and create some continuity, yeah, for our students, because our students need that. Change can be hard. Yeah. Did I answer everything in that question, Leanne, or did I maybe leave a part out?
No, I think you did great. We get a couple more, but let's move on because I know we're getting, we still have a lot of information to cover.
Okay, here we just have just one example of one of our adult transition program daily schedules. As you can see, the school day, you know, looks slightly similar to what it might look like in high school. Not really too much of a difference with that. What is different is that everything is built around how can we support our student with employment skills and developing those employment skills, even on campus, even in the classroom, as well as off campus in some cases, or even within other departments in Clovis Unified, which is a really cool thing that we have set up for some of our student groups. We have work site, as you can see, between 8:30 and 11:30 on this schedule. We have such a range of different work sites set up. We have some students that actually on a weekly basis go as part of their day and do a volunteer work experience during their time at ATP on Fridays with their teacher, and it is at the Poverello House. And the student feedback about that experience is unbelievable. We also have a partnership with local companies, restaurants. We have a group that goes to an irrigation company on a weekly basis and does some assembly of irrigation parts, which is very cool. And that's just a tiny bit.
Okay, so here are two students and their perspective on what a certificate of completion is.
Okay, so certificate of completion is like when you when you graduate from high school, it's just like a regular one of your grades.
Okay.
I think it's like related to grades.
Okay.
Like if you give a C, you can still.
And then another one.
Is where you completed like some of school, like in high school, but didn't get your diploma yet. So when you get the credits to go in the high school diploma classes, then you can start that. And
So as you can see, it is confusing, certificate of completion. Students get confused with this sometimes because they go to the graduation, they wear the cap and the gown, they walk across the stage, and it's not sinking in exactly what it is. Both of these students had their certificate of completion after high school. And so you can see the differences in their interpretations of it. So this is where it's really important for us as educators and parents also to have these discussions with the student to make them understand what it is and what they can do with that. Come on, there we go. Okay.
So we are going to share with you a little bit about the Clovis Adult Transition Program. And we prepared a slideshow to share with our incoming students last year. And we did it, again, to support the transition. So we sent it to the secondary teachers to show and share with the students that were matriculating to us. We also encouraged the case managers at the secondary sites to share it with the parents and to tell them, hey, we're working at school on transition activities, and we shared this with your student today. We wanted you to have it so that if you had an opportunity to watch it and listen to the voiceover, and you could have some continued conversations at home about how the student will be going to ATP. It was actually a pretty good tool. A lot of our new parents to ATP shared some really helpful feedback about that. So we're putting a new twist on it this year, but we incorporated parts of it into this presentation. That just shows a picture of different parts of, we are on the campus of the Clovis Adult School as we are adults in the Adult Transition Program. We have an extension to that campus as a result of overall growth at ATP. So we actually are also, we have 2 of our classes on the Clovis online campus, which is just a short jaunt down the David E. Cook Way.
Okay, so this is the Transition Resource and Assessment Center. This is where actually Katie and I are sitting right now. This is where my law office is located. It is right behind the Clovis Library. And this is a place where the Workability and Transition Partnership Program is located. And there are many resources here for transition. All the curriculum and assessments are here. And in the rest of this presentation of the Adult Transition Program, you're going to hear a voice, a man's voice, and that is Christoph Luce. So don't be alarmed when you hear this strange voice come on. He is the first and original teacher at Clovis Adult Transition Program, and so you'll be hearing him in a minute.
So as I said, our program is currently made up of 13 teachers. 12 of which are the self-contained special education classroom teachers. For next year, we'll be growing to 14 due to our overall student growth, which is exciting, very exciting.
Our ATP focus, all campus activities and experiences are adapted to meet each student's individual needs and centered around the following domains: self-advocacy and personal social living skills, daily living and independent living skills, community access, and vocational skills. In our self-advocacy, personal social domain, we address the following skills: teaching the students how to advocate for themselves in their IEP meetings, with their family members, and with the community service providers; building and maintaining positive relationships with peers, employers, and the general public at large; assisting students in setting meaningful and realistic goals that empower them to create the future they would like to have; learning the required social skills to create appropriate and meaningful relationships that for many will carry into their post-secondary programs and lifelong friendships. For our daily and independent living skills, we focus on the following: budgeting and money skills, hygiene and health, meal preparation, community signs, reading labels, recipes, and menus, and managing bank accounts. Community resources and community access is a large part of our community-based instruction. Some of the most important community agencies that will assist our students and their families include, but are not limited to, the following: Central Valley Regional Center, or CVRC, and the adult day programs they support; the Department of Rehabilitation, or DOR, Resources for Independence; the Transition Partnership Program, or TPP. This is a partnership between Clovis Unified School District and the Department of Rehabilitation; and Disabled Student Services for any of our students wishing to continue their education at the community college level. A great program at Fresno City College is the College to Careers program. Part of our transportation training includes identifying the most appropriate and safest modes of transportation for each individual student and teaching them how to safely use them. For some students, that means obtaining their driver's license and having a basic understanding of the responsibilities and costs involved in owning a vehicle. Clovis ATP does not provide behind-the-wheel training. However, if a student qualifies for our Transition Partnership Program, driver's ed may be an option TPP can assist with. Some students will be able to access the community using regular Clovis Stage Line and Fresno Fax buses. For others, it may mean to qualify and learn how to use public door-to-door services such as Roundup in Clovis and Handy Ride in Fresno. For our ATP students who require a greater level of supervision to ensure their safety as they access the community, learning how to ride in a school van is very important. Most adult day programs that some of our ATP students will go to when they age out provide door-to-door service using vans similar to the ones we use. Practicing pedestrian safety while navigating the community is also an important part of our instruction and helps us assess which mode of transportation will give the student the greatest level of independence in a safe environment. Vocational skills are a very important part of independence. At Clovis ATP, we use many different modalities to assist our students in gaining a wide variety of employment skills. Our primary focus is on soft skills and work readiness skills such as having a good attitude, communication, both listening and speaking skills, instilling a strong work ethic, teamwork, time management, decision-making, conflict resolution, self-confidence, resume building, job applications, and interview prep. Our employment continuum looks as follows: in-classroom instruction, role-playing, and work bins, followed by non-paid community-based work sites on and off campus. Students can then be referred to our workability program, in which a student has the opportunity of up to 80 hours of paid work experience. And the final step is a referral to the Transition Partnership Program, who can assist with gainful employment in the competitive workforce.
All right, so some of our activities, recreation and leisure, some of the activities to support that we do at our program is the ATP clubs. So this is a once a week where the teachers each are responsible for leading a certain activity. Some of them are karaoke, games, art, exercise. There's also outdoor recreation activities, volunteering at the Poverello House, which Katie mentioned earlier. And then also we participate in the Special Olympics.
Breakfast and lunch at ATP. The adult school campus has a student lounge that is shared with all other adult school students, many of whom also use that space to do homework and study for their exams in various nursing programs, ESL, U.S. citizenship, and high school diploma classes. The student lounge has several vending machines with snacks, sandwiches, drinks, and coffee. There are also a couple of microwaves for student use. School breakfast and lunches are ordered from the Gateway cafeteria on a daily basis. Students have an opportunity to eat their meals in their classrooms, in the student lounge, or off campus independently. As of late, DoorDash has also become a popular option for our students who wish to purchase an off-campus lunch without leaving the campus.
And this is the area where students are dropped off and picked up before and after school. Different modes of transportation are special ed transportation for those who are eligible. Also, some students take the city bus, which would be stage line, those green buses that you see going around town. Also, we have a lot of students taking Roundup and or Handy Ride to school. Some students live close enough and have the privilege of walking to school, and so they will. And then there are those students that also prefer to have parent picking them up and dropping them off. Some other things to consider is students that don't want to continue education post-high school. They can enroll in personal enrichment courses or training, such as carpentry, mechanics, beauty school, etc. The difference between Clovis adult or any education after their high school is, in high school, you're mandated to go. You're going to get a phone call if you do not show up to school. Adult school is not the same thing. After a student reaches 18 and is out of high school, they do not have to attend. Of course, we do encourage them and we want them to, but it is just an option for them to attend. We do have to provide it, but they do not have to go. So seeking out assistance from community agencies is also very important. Department of Rehab, Transition Partnership Program helps support employment. Social Security Administration will help with financial aid for those who qualify. Workforce Connection and California Conservation Corps, which we always call it CCC. Those are work programs and that have residential and also non-residential options. These are great programs for students to gain work experience. And we have a lot of students that have gone that route. They get to ATP and this is not for me right now. I really want to work. And so those are some options that they can choose. There's also recreation and leisure activities. So Break the Barriers or Special Olympics. They can join their local gym. They can access community transportation like we talked about, either the city bus, roundup, or handy ride. There's also recreational league sports that are designed for individuals with disabilities that they can participate in concurrently with adult transition program, or if they don't want to be part of the adult transition program, they can do this. Important is, and I just talked about this, an eligible under the age of 22 adult student can re-enroll at any time into CUSD to attend ATP at any point. So let's say we've had this happen where a student finishes high school and they're all, I'm done. I've been going to school for 13 years. I do not want to go to school anymore. That is fine. And then about a year goes by and they decide, okay, you know what? Or mom and dad are like, you need to do something. And maybe the working didn't work out. They weren't able to find a job. And so then they come back to Clovis Adult Transition Program. They come back to open arms. So it is available for them as long as they're eligible.
So parent perspective on transition, specifically for the parent population of our students who are not able to earn that high school diploma. So these are our parent perspectives in terms of those that come to us from high school and into the adult transition program. They talk about the challenges with the building trust. Parents have voiced how building trust outside of the school, with whether that mean employment or working with CVRC to find an individual who can provide respite care and opening up whatever that network of support is for the student, and how challenging that is as our students age and become that 18 to 22 year range. Parents have shared communication barriers. A lot of our families have experienced with Valley Children's Hospital being transitioned from a physician that has known their doctor or known their child for their entire childhood, and then upon turning 18, that transition happens there, and how that interplays sometimes for some of our students who have significant medical needs at school and require medical care while attending school at ATP. So that's just one very recent example that was shared by a parent, but this whole transition process and having their student 18 to 22 has just been a lot. Parents have shared, that being met wherever they are in their process, that sometimes that comes with a lot of emotion, and people that respond to that with compassion and kindness is appreciated and needed, because it can be emotional and frustrating and a lot of that. Parents have voiced concern regarding the transition process in general, whether that be just the changes when they're on a high school campus. There's students on a high school campus for 4 years. They become very familiar with understanding where the office is and who the nurse is, or at least where the health office is, and the principal, and those sorts of things become familiar and routine. And this does shake that up a bit, and change can be really difficult. So yeah, change in location, questions and concerns about, will my child, my adult student, be safe? Changing of new faces, new staff, all of those things, can come with concerns and worry. We do our best to, again, through the transition IEP meeting, before the student comes to us, we try to do a lot of work behind the scenes as IEP team, and in collaborating with that team that knows your student the best. We work really hard on going and seeing your student in their high school setting, so that we can see all the supports that are in place there, and ask clarifying questions, and watching those familiar people interacted and work with your student. So there are so many things behind the scenes that we do to try to mitigate some of these things. But if we're not sharing that with our families might not know. The other things that came up from the parent perspective, definitely transportation, worries about accessing public transportation for their student, or just special education transportation, and some challenges that sometimes come with that. Conservatorship and going through that process was shared from a parent perspective, or obtaining power of attorney. In addition, having the reemergence of past behavioral things happen with your student as a result of new, that was also shared.
So how can families help in this process? One of the things is encourage your student to attend school. Okay, even though they don't have to, it's good to encourage them at the Clovis transition or adult transition program on a regular and consistent basis. Also, make sure your student has a California ID. We talked about this, and I'm emphasizing again, this is needed for work, to open up a bank account, and for a job. Help your student open up their own bank account. Okay, so for those that are getting SSI, when they turn 18, you have to apply again as an adult, and it is going to be important to keep it separate from your own money. That's a whole other topic, but have them open up their own bank account. It's very important. Facilitate connections and follow up with your student to build connections with community agencies, Department of Rehab, CBRC, SSI, or Social Security Office. The Social Security Administration, make sure your student has access to their Social Security card. I mentioned this earlier, and make sure that the card is signed exactly as the name printed on the front. They will need this for any paid work. So this is really important. If their name is, for instance, I'm Shannon Kelly Jorgensen, I have to sign my Social Security card, Shannon Kelly Jorgensen. It can't just be Shannon Jorgensen. There are places that will reject that, and you'll have to go get a new card. So make sure it's signed and signed correctly. And learn about the process to support your adult student to apply for SSI. Do this the day they turn 18. It will take a long time. You'll probably get denied the first time and have to appeal it. But once you are approved, if you are approved, you will be back paid to the day that you actually applied. So it's important to do it as early as possible on their 18th birthday if you can. Doesn't always happen, but sooner the better. And then build upon a support network for your adult student outside of the house. So I like for the families to envision the student when they are 40 years old. And this is really hard, but what does that look like? Who will be their support if the parent is no longer around? This is something that's hard to think about, but has to be thought about. And it is better to be there for your student to help them through that process and that transition when you are there and healthy, and help them cope with it versus it being sprung on them at some point. So this is something that start planning now. And then start as early as elementary school, so there's just no surprises.
Okay, so we have questions, possibly.
Yeah.
This is our check-in time, although due to time, I'm not sure how you feel about that.
Well, Katie, let's do this. We do have a few questions concerning specifically the ATP program.
Yes.
So let's ask those before we move on to this, the high school diploma track. But what I want to give the disclaimer is, if you need to log off, we know we're running over, but again, this is important information. If you need to log off, that's okay. Like I said, you're going to get the recording. You can finish it at your own convenience. But let's go ahead and wrap up with these adult transition programs before we move on to the diploma track. So, number one, what are the state mandated graduation requirements for a high school diploma in California? Is it just course credits, not IEP goals met, not state testing standards? That is a deep question.
That is, and the best place to get that information addressed is actually in the context of your IEP. There's a section in your IEP. It's on the actual the transition plan, the second page. It talks about the course study, and it really outlines for a student what they're working towards, and if there's a certain number of credits that they are working to obtain, and it's all based on what has been mandated by the state and set up by our district. So the best place to get that information is there, and to see, you know, where your student is in relation to that. That's the best place to get that information. But yes, there are state requirements.
Also on that same page, there's a box that says certificate of completion or diploma. And so that box should be marked diploma if they're working toward their diploma, or certificate of completion if they're working toward the certificate of completion.
Good information. All right, can a student in Clovis Unified attending ATP work on their GED as they participate in Clovis ATP, or does a student enroll in Clovis Adult and earn the GED on their own?
Okay, you want me to answer that, Katie, or do you want to?
Sure.
So when they come over from high school with a certificate of completion, at their transition IEP, it will be discussed and they will be going over to Clovis Adult Transition Program. If they wanted to go to Clovis Adult School, there is an exam that they have to take, which is called the TABE. It's the Adult Basic Skills, the Adult Basic Test. I'm saying that wrong, but anyways. And they have to score a certain number in order to take the high school diploma classes. And that is for any student that goes to a Clovis Adult School. So if they want to go that route and they qualify, then there will have to be an IEP meeting where the IEP team sits down and discusses the best plan for the student. Katie, would you like to add anything on that?
No, I think that's great. Other than if they are not currently enrolled in any classes at their high school that are working towards a high school diploma, I think that question can even be asked currently, because that probably wouldn't set your student up for success to go that route if it's not an appropriate route now, if that makes sense, in high school. It might be because they aren't able to access the instruction, in which case it doesn't matter if it's in the high school setting or the Clovis Adult School setting. That point of access is critical. Classes for the high school diploma can be about 2 hours in length. They require in-class assignments in order to obtain what is needed to pass the class. It's pretty intense. We have had some of our students who were on a course to earn their diploma, but for several reasons, some had moved out of district and then moved back. There's other variables to this, but didn't actually get their high school diploma at their high school. Because they were on a diploma track, it is appropriate for students that meet that profile to enroll in Clovis Adult School. There is a support team that can provide some services and support for those individual students, but those are IEP team discussions and decisions. So asking the questions now to the current team is the best next step, because that's going to give you the information to plan for what's next for your student.
That is great advice, because you're right. That's pretty much the point of the ITP, right? Is you're planning for those next steps after high school. Okay, so does the transition IEP usually happen in the last couple of months of the student's senior year? And will the transition specialist reach out to us?
Oh, I love this. The transition IEP, they actually happen all year, that a student's last year in high school. And I say that because there's an awful lot of annual IEP meetings that are due, let's just say in October or November. And it's appropriate for one of our ATP teachers to attend that annual meeting, which we now refer to as a plan review IEP, to also discuss transition at the conclusion of their 4th year of high school, to prepare for them to come to the adult transition program. So we try to synthesize and pare down the number of meetings, but certainly there's a lot of change that happens with some of our students, where you may have an IEP in October or November of their senior year, and the case manager maybe wants to, in addition to that meeting, plan a specific transition meeting instead of combining them. That's not uncommon. And sometimes that's done, that can be very helpful because of the changes that a student may have between that time, their last year of high school. The whole team of adult transition program teachers, they are the experts, and will be at the table for your IEP meetings. There's a lot of work, as I said, that goes on in behind the scenes. There's visitations, observations to learn and learn about the team supporting your student. So as far as the teacher from ATP reaching out directly to the parent, that wouldn't be part of our process. We would instead work with the current case manager and be a part of that IEP. But if you had any questions as a parent, I would, write them down, reach out for assistance. I would start with the current case manager so that they can invite all the people to the table for that IEP meeting. Could also request an IEP meeting so that we can all be there to, address your questions as they relate to transition.
Great advice. I've got one last question, then we're going to move on. Does our student continue with annual IEPs and triennials during ATP?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Those due dates continue, and the evolution of that IEP as it relates to whatever the individual student needs continues. Yes. What's exciting though is you will see a student-led and student-facilitated IEP meeting, which becomes an important part of the adult transition program as we work to support our students in understanding their disability, how their disability impacts them, and what that might look like, and what they might need as a result. And it is the most empowering and incredible thing. Our families love that first IEP meeting where they have the student there and they're showing, photos as they talk about what their interests and preferences and strengths are, and showing visuals of them at ATP, engaging in all sorts of activities as it relates to that. But it really is a wonderful thing. So we are talking about a high school diploma now. Do we have, was that the last question, Leanne?
That was it, yeah. Mm-hmm.
That was a terrible transition there. So when we talk about the high school diploma pathway, ultimately this would be the overarching goal that we would want for all students, is to be able to access the instruction, take the required classes, and be able to earn that high school diploma. It is something that can be obtained at the conclusion of the 4-year high school program. and it is aligned with those state standards. It does mean that the student along the way is able to access the instruction that that really meets that rigor of the grade level standard with which that student is in. So 9th grade would mean the student is able to access the instruction at that 9th grade level and rigor, and is able to pass that class, obtaining the credits. A high school diploma is needed for most employment, not all, but most employment. And it is something that is required if you are wanting to obtain college degrees. We are going to now talk about perspective of one of our students who did earn their diploma. Sorry, Shannon. Want to talk a little bit about what happens after the high school diploma?
Sorry, I was muted. I apologize. What happens after high school diploma is a student exits from special education. This is very important to understand. So they get that high school diploma. They no longer are going to receive services from Clovis Unified. What can they do? They can obtain employment. They can enroll in college, Clovis Community College, Fresno City, Fresno State for some. They can enroll in a trade school, welding, electrician, etc., or a vocational certificate program, such as cosmetology school. They can join the military if they want, or they can be part of an apprentice opportunity. There are so many different possibilities, and the most important thing is to start planning now and start talking to your student about the different options and researching and exploring what they can do. There's so many things that are available to them.
So as Shannon just said, there is a way in which an exit from special education occurs. And one of those ways is when a student who has an IEP earns that high school diploma. So a few things that are important to know about this, and this chart really captures it nicely, because we understand our students will continue to need help. If not in employment, they will continue to need help, you know, with attending junior colleges or trade schools, things like that. The biggest difference is when you are under an IEP and the supports provided is that they really are provided to the student. The student isn't needing to initiate that, okay? So that's the biggest difference between the two. And you know, the legal mandates and things like that are a component of that. Once a student exits from special education upon obtaining their high school diploma and wants to enroll in a junior college, as we talked about, it is definitely an accommodations model, which is very different from an IEP that has in services that are designed to support the student in making progress on their goals. So with an accommodations model, the student has to be the initiator. That means they have to initiate the need to get those accommodations in their classes. A lot of accommodations may not be appropriate for a junior college setting. All of that can be part of your student's transition plan before they get their diploma and leave high school. And that is a wonderful way to build capacity, is by working with the case manager and talking with your student about DSPS, which is the department at a junior college that provides those accommodations. So again, there are things that you will want to understand that your student's going to need to do. They're going to have proof of their disability. There are a few ways in which to demonstrate that proof. It's written out here. And they are no longer protected under that IDEA. Now it is the American with Disabilities Act and the protections and provisions provided under that.
So here is Haley once again, and she's going to give us her perspective of what a high school diploma is.
Where you get your diploma and then you can do other jobs that require the diploma, and then you can finally go on to college.
That's wonderful. And Haley is working right now toward getting her high school diploma, and she's almost done.
Okay, so how families can help. So researching and visiting those community colleges, and as I said, visiting the DSPS office, even online, is a great way that you can support your student who is working towards their diploma and will be exiting from special education and having that IEP, but wanting to continue to attend or enroll in a junior college. Talk to your student on an ongoing basis about their future, as well as understanding the importance of your student attending their IEP and in the preparation for not having an IEP. So attending their IEP, their last year of high school, and understanding and actually talking about, now there's not going to be these types of meetings anymore after you get your diploma, and actually talking about that. Talking regularly about alternative options, having a backup plan, and sometimes having a backup to the backup plan is a great way to encourage that things don't always go as planned, but we have to be able to, bob and weave and keep going. We've talked a little bit about utilizing the community resources available, especially in the earlier stages, to help foster and facilitate whatever the interests of your student and what it is that they want in their future. Helping your student to self-advocate. This will transfer and be imperative in the workplace. It also will be imperative for our students who are able to get their diploma, because they will need to be able to initiate those accommodations. They will not be provided. They will instead need to be actively initiated and then accessed without somebody telling them to access their accommodation. Of course, teaching resilience skills is going to transcend any challenge that our young students may have, as well as really talking with them about plans and alternatives. So,
thank you, Katie. So this is one of our success stories. This is Dalton Maines. He was a student that he exited high school with a certificate of completion and came to the adult transition program and wanted to attend a program called Wayfinders through Fresno State. And this was a video that we actually helped him with submit in his application. And so I wanted to show it to you guys.
Hi, I am Dalton Maines. I am 21 years old. I was born in Fresno, California on September 21st, 2000. And I live with my parents in Clovis, California, and I have a sister who lives in Lemoore with her husband. I have autism because I have a hard time focusing on things and not get distracted, and I also have a hard time dealing with loud noises. My interests are playing guitar, playing video games, collecting stuff such as pop figures, t-shirts, and also video games, other stuff that catches my interest.
Hey, y'all like my mask? It has like all the Marvel superheroes on it. You can see Spider-Man, there's Iron Man, Captain America, The Thing, Mr. Fantastic, the Invisible Woman, Wolverine, you name it.
So when I have free time, I go to stores and I like to shop for things. And whenever my parents aren't around to take me, sometimes I would just walk there. Yeah, I don't mind being in the community, especially with friends or other acquaintances. I also like camping, fishing, swimming, going on trips, and also going on vacations, such as the beach and amusement parks.
Hey you guys, we just got off the Millennium Falcon ride, and it was so cool. It felt like we were on an actual, it felt like we were actually in a Star Wars movie. And so, I'm about to try my very first Galaxy's Edge milk. That is delicious as heck.
And I also like going to events such as concerts and fairs, and also sports games, just whatever catches my interest. I also like to cook. I also sort my own laundry, and I take the bus whenever I need to go to school. My goals are to get my high school diploma and my driver's license and live on my own in an apartment whenever I'm done. And I would also like to get a permanent job, which is why I would love to come to Wayfinders. Thank you.
So just a little update on Dalton. Love that video. He is currently, he did get accepted to Wayfinders, and before he went to Wayfinders, he did finish his high school diploma and earned his high school diploma at Clovis Adult School. Went on to Wayfinders, where he is currently, and he lives in the Palazzos independently with some roommates, doing wonderful. In fact, he's coming tomorrow and paying me a visit. So we're going to get a little update even more so on how he's doing. So we're really proud of him. He's doing great. He's really succeeding. All right, so here is a little, oh no, this is you. Sorry, Katie, go ahead.
No, it's it's okay.
Yes, this is a visual showing what is offered to students while they are enrolled in high school. So over here on the left, it shows how it changes after they graduate with a diploma. So they now must apply to be found eligible for services that they once received in high school. So as you can see, they had academics, assistive technology, all those things on the left-hand side. They didn't have to go seek for it. Those were provided for them. As soon as they graduated with a high school diploma, now they can still get some of those services, but they're going to have to advocate, and they're going to have to go after and search for those. So it's just something to keep in mind and help your students to be able to do that once they get their high school diploma.
This chart is a great way to sort of capture different supports available for any individual, and then specific supports that a student with a disability may find to be more useful or more helpful. And it is organized by employment, education, and training, as well as independent living. So for our students who are able to earn a high school diploma, they may seek out some of these resources listed here for help regarding employment under the For All particular square, although they may find more success in narrowing that to be able to get some more specific support as their disability may warrant.
Okay, and this is our final slide for the evening. So here are just some of the many resources that are available to you. These are direct links to these different websites that we have discussed throughout our presentation. Like I said, though, there's many more resources out there, and I encourage you to reach out to your IEP team for some advice on some other resources. Those are great times during the IEP meetings to gain that information from your team. So are there any questions?
Yeah, we appreciate all of the questions so far. And I just wanted to say that Shannon and I can absolutely, our contact information is part of the presentation at the beginning, and we are more than happy to support with any question that you might have. We understand that this process can be a lot, and we are here to help guide you.
Thank you so much, ladies. I was trying to figure out, let's stop sharing. Here we go. All right. So thank you. This was so much information, but it's so important. Again, from that parent perspective, even, you know, are typically developing kiddos. I think so many parents aren't prepared for those changes that take place in California when your child turns 18 and your typical developing kiddo goes off to college, and you know, you get that insurance bill in the mail and you try and call the dentist and say, hey, why is, you know, Johnny, why are we receiving a bill for this? And they say, well, I'm sorry, Mrs. Keeler, we can't discuss that with you. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Because Johnny can't find the hamper. And you're telling me that he's supposed to call you and, you know, discuss his insurance? I mean,
Exactly.
you know, and so again, it's just so important to start these conversations early. You know, I loved the suggestion about having that portfolio per se. That was, you know, my heart when I put together the IEP binder that's available for families to download. And there's that transition planning section. And of course, it's not all encompassing, but it's just to get that, what basic information do you need to have gathered? Again, even for your typically developing child, but especially for our kiddos that have a disability, you know, you have to think about, what if, God forbid, you were not able to speak for them tomorrow? Okay, what information do you need in one place for somebody to be able to access? Whether that is if your child is capable of advocating for themselves to take with them, or if your child is medically, you know, impaired or verbally impaired and can't speak for themselves, what does somebody need to know? Who are their doctors? What insurance do they have? Who are their case managers, et cetera, et cetera? And so again, it is extremely important to just start these conversations and have that information organized. So thank you, ladies. Thank you for being available tonight and for families in the future to be able to ask you questions.
Absolutely.
Yeah, from the bottom of my heart, thank you.
Oh,
Okay.
thank you for having us.
So you too, get some rest, and again, all your contact information is in that handout. So, all right, good evening, everyone, and thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.